Okay, the next thing that we are going to talk about is what to do if you're attending an event as a safety volunteer and you come across someone who is bleeding. We'll talk about various different kinds of bleeding, but I first want to talk about triaging bleeding a little bit. So say you have 3 or 4 people who are bleeding. Maybe, something has gone wrong and you have more than one person injured at a time. The most alarming type of bleeding is the type of bleeding that would be spurting and a bright red color. That's an arterial bleed, and that would be the people that you want to help first. And then you might have heavy bleeding, but a darker red color and no spurting, just kind of, like a slow losing. That's more likely to be a vein that has been cut, and that would be your second priority for sure. And then you have people with the minor injuries that we've kind of already discussed with when I talked about making the packets. And those people, you can just give a Band-Aid or help them put on the Band-Aid if you want. Make sure that if you do help them put on the Band-Aid yourself, that you cover your hands with gloves so that you're not, if you have any cuts in your hands or anything like that, there's no exchange of bodily fluids. So like, if somebody's just cut, this is Bob. Bob is our friend. We use Bob for demonstrating a lot of different things. Bob's in kind of rough shape because he's been used to tourniquet a few times now. And we're not going to be doing that because we aren't concerned about that this evening. Right now we're going to pretend like Bob is just bleeding from maybe this spot right here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take this spot and you're going to put, this is a trauma pad. It's called an ABD pad. You can use this, you can use a maxi pad. And see, this is the reason that I buy maxi pads, because this isn't all an ABD pad is. And and some of them that you buy online aren't even sold as being sterile. They're just sold as being, individually wrapped. And to me, the money that you spend on these just isn't worth it when you can do the same thing with one of the maxi pads for pennies on the dollar, honestly. But I have one that I keep because I'm cheap and I use it all the time in demonstrations. So I'll show. So just depending on how big the wound is, you can fold it up if it's a smaller wound. If it's a bigger wound, you can take it out. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to apply compression. You're going to find, try to find the source of the bleeding, and you're going to apply compression, and then you're going to want to hold that down. It takes a minimum of 10 minutes for a clot to form. So you're going to want to hold that down for 15 minutes before you look at it, because if you lift it up, it could let the bleeding start gushing again, and that can move the clot out, and then you have to start all over again and hold it for another 15 minutes, and you don't want to do that. So if for some reason they would be bleeding badly enough that they would soak through this pad, rather than, and I don't have another one, rather than letting up the pressure, you don't want to let the pressure up, you would, take your second pad. I don't really have anything to use right now, but we'll just pretend. You would take your second pad, and you want to maintain that pressure and just put the second pad on top of the first pad. If you release pressure while you're doing that by accident, you have to set the clock over again at 15 minutes, because without a hemostatic agent, you're not going to get a decent clot before 10 minutes. So then you just hold this, and after 15 minutes, if the person is still bleeding, then you're going to have to move on to more serious measures. And at this point, if you're a beginner, you're probably in over your head, and it might be a good idea to find another safety volunteer in the area who has experience with more severe bleeds. The other thing that we can do if you have a lot of people hurt, like something has happened where you have several people bleeding and you don't have time to attend to just one person's bleed for 15 minutes, you can either have them hold the pad or have somebody else hold the pad. But it's really tricky when you have bystanders or people hold the pad themselves, because if they don't have that training to know that they need that hold that on there for those 10 minutes, then a lot of times what will happen is they'll be peeking to see if it's still bleeding. And if it starts bleeding, it pushes whatever clot has formed out, and then you have to start all over again. Sometimes what I like to do is take one of the compression pads or bandages that I made earlier, and now this is kind of a cheating one because I didn't have enough space, but I use it for demonstration. If you were using this, you'd have the ones that I made earlier, you'd have a lot more. But you can put this on the area, and you can just wrap it around really tightly, not so tight that you eliminate the distal pulse, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But you want to do it tightly enough that you feel like you're putting as much pressure as you could with your hand. And with this tender tape, you can do a pretty good job of that. And you can then, because you've already got a fair amount of pressure on there, then you're better off asking a bystander or the person themselves to hold it while you move on to the next person, and then you can move on to the next person. And say you have 3 or 4 people hurt, by the time you get to the 4th person and you have this established and you have a bystander, applying a little additional pressure to the outside, you can come back and be pretty sure that this has had enough pressure on it for 15 minutes, or for however long you've been gone. And if it soaks through the pad, you want to put another pad over top. You don't want to release that pressure, you can worry about the tape, just plop the other pad on top. Again, after 15 minutes, if you're still bleeding, you need to find somebody who is qualified to handle that kind of a bleed. So there's my practice. So now we're going to talk about this puncture wound. Bob was walking his dog down Highway 6 and was attacked from out of nowhere by an unsavory man in the dark, driving a pickup and listening to White Yoakum. And we need to deal with this object. So the first thing you need to know is that you never, ever, ever, ever take an object out of an injury yourself. It's entirely possible that Bob has been here for longer than 10 minutes and that injury might already have some clots around it, and if you remove this, then you're pulling away the clots, and that can be a mess, and you have to start all over again. It's also possible that this impaled object is actually lodged against a blood vessel and preventing bleeding, and that if you pull it out to like a geyser of blood, and you really don't want to do that. So what we're going to do in this situation is teach you how to use a ring bandage. Now this is like a really cheap triangular bandage that came in one of those pre-made kits that I bought once, and it's terrible and I would never use it in real life, but I keep it for demonstrations because, again, I'm cheap and I don't want to keep using up my good stuff for, you can make these out of unbleached muslin. These smaller ones that I use for first aid are, I think they're 150 centimeters. It's just a triangle. So what we're going to do here is we're going to first swing this together in the middle. Okay, we should have started a little bit further out. Okay, so and you're going to swing it so that it's tight like that, and then you have a tail on each side. Sometimes this is tricky. I kind of, and then you're going to wrap this around your hand until you reach the tail on the other side, and then holding it together like that. I probably should have. You're going to take it off your hand, and then you're going to just take the tail and kind of weave it. So this one starts like this, so you're going to go like this, and you're just kind of weave it around the bandage. It just holds it together in a ring. People who knit or crochet, and you'll have to forgive the reference to that sort of thing. I am a grandma. People who knit or crochet might recognize this as like something that you do to start a rounded hat sometimes. But anyway, so now we have this nice little ring, and it, the tails are gonna pop up, but it's pretty much holding together on its own at this point. Like, I don't have to fight with it to get it to stay together. And then you're gonna slide it very carefully over said impaled object. And then you're going to take a roll of just your gauze and you're going to wrap it. Oops, my gauze got away from me. I probably wouldn't use that if this was I'd probably get a new piece if it touched the ground if I was working on a person, but since this is just Bob and he's seen better days, I think we'll just go with that. And you just kind of come up, see what I'm doing? I come up on one side and I kind of cross down around, and then I come up on the other side and I kind of cross around, and I'm kind of just like going around back on one side, and then I'll come back up, and then when I run out of gauze, wherever I run out of gauze, I'm just going to take a piece of, I have some Steri-Strips that I use, but just a piece of tape, anything to, like, you know, hold that there. You're not wanting to put too much pressure on it, but this will help control the bleeding until you can get this person to the next tier of help. And you want to stay with this person until EMT or EMS or physician or whoever relieves you. But again, never take this out. That's something for doctors and hospitals to do. You're just trying to stabilize the person until that next tier of help comes. Okay, so this is something that, you know, you can take your hands off of after you do. You don't have to maintain pressure. You don't even want to maintain pressure because you might accidentally push something and pop that out. The next thing I'm going to teach you to do is when you need to apply pressure to a wound, but you can't, you need to apply pressure to a wound, but you can't, there's nothing to wrap it around. So like a cavity injury, cut here, you know, like if somebody has, you know, a slice in their abdomen or something like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to, and this can get a little messy, you're going to kind of want to look in the wound and see if you can, like, look around, say, let's say right here, you know, and see if you can identify where the bleed actually is. And as close as you can come to identifying where the bleed actually is, you want to ball up the end of your gauze a little bit. This is just regular gauze. There is what they call hemostatic gauze. It's really expensive, but it is much, much better for this than regular gauze would be. I don't have it, and even if I did, I wouldn't demo with it because it costs $25 for a roll like this. So then you're going to, with a couple of fingers, try to apply pressure where you see that. And so the hemostatic gauzes come kind of accordioned out. And so it's really important that when you bring this down, you maintain pressure with the new hand before you take the other fingers back to grab more gauze, and then you switch out. You never relieve pressure on that area. And then you switch out and you continue to switch out, holding pressure down. Even if it's just with I try to do it with my thumb and my forefinger, but even if it's just with the thumb or a couple of fingers, you never let the pressure up, and you stick that whole 25-foot roll of gauze pad, well, I mean, depending on how big the wound is, but if it's a big enough wound that you need to pack it, then in there, and then in this situation, you're sorry guys, in this situation, you're stranded. That would be bad to do, so don't do that. But you're stranded. You do not hand this off to another person. You do not leave this person, and you do not let go of that pressure. Honestly, I mean, after 15 or 20 minutes, you could maybe take a peek, but if it's still bleeding, then you're going to have to do the whole thing over again. I honestly, if I was to the point where I thought that a wound needed to be packed, I would just stay here with this person until the next tier of help arrived. So that's packing a wound. And the last thing I'm going to show you as far as bleeding and impalement and things like that is what to happen if you get something, if someone has, say maybe a car window near them has shattered and they have glass in their eye. What we're going to do is we're going to take a round pad, and I use nursing pads for this. They come in, this is another thing I pack up ahead of time. I probably should have mentioned that. These are paper cups. I pack a couple paper cups and a couple nursing pads. And these come in these also come in a sealed pad like a maxi pad would. Again, much, much cheaper than the round pads that they sell. And I mean, if you have tons of money to buy the real stuff, that's fine. I don't have that because I'm often working at events where there are a lot of people. So what you're going to do is you're going to tuck that, if you can see how I've tucked that up in there, you're going to tuck this up in there a little bit, and you're going to take and you're going to place it over the person's wounded eye. Being careful not to push anything in or anything like this. You're basically protecting the eye until you can get them someplace where the physician, and then you're going to take your gauze, it would be your roll of gauze like this, or I suppose you could use tender tape, but you want to be careful not to do it too tightly. And you're going to wrap it around both eyes. And the reason you want to wrap it around both eyes is because even though the eyes move together, the eye muscles can't move independently of one another. And if this eye moves over to there, and that piece of glass suddenly moves with it, on this eye, that piece of glass is embedded in this eye, and you move this eye moves too, and that can cause more damage over here. So it's just a lot better, people, if you take the bandage and bandage over both eyes, and I can't do that to myself, but you get the idea that, and then again, you're just gonna have that person wait until the next tier of help arrives. There's not a tremendous amount that you can do as far as helping somebody with ophthalmology things. They really need to just get to the emergency room to get whatever it is taken out of their eye. So that is a really short tutorial on how to handle some bleeding situations, and situations where somebody might have something stuck in them. And we will go on to talk about sprains and slings here in the next video.